Your life is not decided by luck, not by talent, but by the tiny choices you make every single day. I know some of you are sitting here today thinking, I want a better life, I want to succeed, I want to be happy. But the truth is, most of us wait for some big moment, a miracle to change our life. What we fail to realize is that life is not changed by grand gestures. It's changed by simple, small daily habits. What you do consistently, day after day, will shape the person you become. And if you ignore your habits, your life will follow the habits you allow, whether good or bad. Every life is made up of moments, and every moment is a choice. We often wait for a grand signal, a sign from the universe, a burst of inspiration, or a moment of motivation to change the trajectory of our lives. But the truth, the subtle yet powerful truth, is that transformation rarely arrives as a thunderclap. It comes quietly, almost imperceptibly, in the small choices we make every day, the tiny decisions that seem inconsequential at the time but slowly, gently accumulate into the architecture of our destiny. Imagine a river. It does not carve a canyon in a day, nor does it move mountains with a single rush of water. It flows. Drop by drop, it wears down stone, shaping valleys, creating life along its path. Our habits are the river drops of our lives. Each choice, a word spoken, a smile offered, a minute spent learning rather than scrolling, appears insignificant alone, yet collectively they define the landscape of who we become. I remember meeting a man once, a teacher, who confided that he felt stuck, that life had passed him by while he was waiting for the right moment to begin. He felt paralyzed by the enormity of change. I asked him simply, "What can you do today that your future self will thank you for?" He shrugged. I suggested, "Spend just 10 minutes reading something that inspires you, something that expands your mind." That day, 10 minutes seemed trivial, almost laughable. Yet over weeks it became 30, then an hour. Months later, he told me he had grown in ways he never imagined possible, not because of one big leap, but because of consistent, small choices that created a ripple effect through every part of his life. We are often blind to the power of these tiny decisions because they do not show immediate results. Our minds are wired for the dramatic, for the big gestures, but life is rarely dramatic. Life is a gentle accumulation of our intentions, our attention, our awareness. It is the quiet moments, the decision to speak kindly when anger rises, to take a step toward health when comfort tempts us, to listen rather than react, that silently craft the person we are becoming. Consider the seed in the soil. It does not sprout overnight. The sun rises and sets countless times, the rain falls, the earth shifts, yet the seed remains patient, steadily drawing life from its surroundings. Your habits are these seeds. Your consistent choices are the nurturing water and sunlight. Ignore them and the seed dies unnoticed. Tend to them with awareness, and over time they blossom into something beyond what you ever imagined. Human psychology is fascinating in this regard. Our brains crave the immediate, the visible, the tangible. We want to see success, to feel results instantly, to be motivated first and then act. But true transformation bypasses motivation. It bypasses the external and begins within. It is not the firework of excitement that changes us, but the quiet discipline of awareness. Catching ourselves when we are about to act unconsciously, pausing to choose a better path, noticing the habits we are feeding each day. It is like walking through a forest. If you are mindful, each step matters. If you are distracted, you stumble and wonder how you ended up lost. Life works the same way. Awareness of your choices ensures your steps are purposeful, while neglect allows momentum to carry you where you do not wish to go. And here lies the subtle, often overlooked point. The choices that seem small are the most profound. A word of encouragement, a few minutes spent reflecting, a decision not to react in anger, a decision to read, to pray, to exercise, to serve. These are not small at all. They are the quiet architects of a meaningful life. They are the invisible threads weaving the fabric of your destiny. And yet, most of us ignore them, waiting for a big opportunity to arrive, while the seeds we already hold remain dormant. I want you to pause for a moment and reflect on this. In your own life, What tiny choices have you made that slowly, almost unnoticed, changed you? Perhaps it was the habit of journaling each night, of saying thank you before meals, of choosing to spend 5 minutes with your children even when exhausted. Perhaps it was a single decision to step away from a toxic friendship, or to replace scrolling with a short walk, or to pray quietly before sleep. These are not dramatic, they do not make headlines. Yet they shape the quality of your mind, the tenderness of your heart, and the strength of your character. And this is why I say gently, but with deep conviction, do not underestimate the small. Do not wait for a thunderous call. Begin with awareness, with mindfulness, with the deliberate recognition of your choices. Observe them and let them guide you. Because over time, as the river carves the canyon and the seed bursts into bloom, your life will be irrevocably transformed. The realizations ahead are far deeper. Stay till the end, or you may miss what truly matters. Keep this in your heart as we continue, because everything we explore next will build upon this simple truth. Your life, in essence, is the sum of your daily choices. And the gentle awareness of each choice, more than fleeting motivation, is what allows those tiny acts to create the extraordinary. Discipline is often misunderstood. Many see it as restriction, as something harsh and rigid, a chain that binds the spirit. But true discipline is not punishment, it is love, quiet and profound, directed toward oneself. It is the recognition that your future self matters just as much as your present comfort, and that every moment of awareness, every deliberate act, is a gift to the life you are becoming. Imagine a gardener tending a young sapling. The gardener does not force the tree to grow overnight, he does not beat it into strength. He waters it, prunes gently, protects it from harsh winds, and patiently allows sunlight to nurture its leaves. Discipline is the gardener of the soul. It is the steady hand that ensures growth, even when the results are invisible, even when no one else notices, and even when the mind complains, longing for ease. In our human psychology, there is a constant battle between impulse and intention. Our minds are wired to seek comfort, to avoid effort, to chase the immediate pleasure of ease. It is tempting to ignore the CALL of discipline, to sleep another hour, to scroll aimlessly, to postpone the tasks that stretch us. Yet those small postponements, repeated day after day, erode the life we hope to build. Awareness is the antidote. Awareness is the quiet pause before you act, the subtle question that arises before you give in. Will this choice serve the life I wish to live, or will it take me further from it? When you answer that question honestly, discipline becomes a loving conversation with yourself, not a command to obey. I remember a young man I met who struggled with self-control. He was bright, talented, and kind, yet he complained of never achieving what he desired. I asked him to describe his daily routine. He laughed and said, "I just wait to feel motivated." I smiled and said, "Motivation is fleeting. Discipline, however, is steady. It is the bridge between your dreams and your actions." He began with one small act, making his bed every morning. It seemed trivial, almost silly, yet this tiny discipline created a ripple. It reminded him that he was capable of following through, that small commitments could be kept, that his life need not be left to chance. From there, he began to exercise, to plan his day, to spend time reflecting instead of reacting. Each act was an expression of self-respect, a gentle declaration, "I care enough about the life I am living to show up consistently." Discipline, in this sense, is deeply relational, not with others but with oneself. It is saying, without fanfare, that your time, your energy, your mind, and your heart are worthy of respect. And when you honor this relationship, the benefits spill outward. Habits become aligned with values, actions gain meaning, and the chaos of distraction loses its power. In everyday life, discipline manifests in the quiet choices we make when no one is watching. It is choosing to eat healthily, to respond instead of react, to speak kindly, to honor commitments, to rest when needed and act when called. These acts are often invisible to the world, yet they shape the contours of our inner landscape. Like a river carving stone, the repeated flow of disciplined action molds character, patience, and resilience. The beauty of discipline is that it does not demand grand gestures or heroic effort. It is found in consistency, in showing up day after day, in honoring the smallest promises we make to ourselves. It does not require motivation which is fleeting and unreliable. It requires awareness, a quiet mindfulness that catches the impulse before it becomes habit, a gentle curiosity about what is truly nourishing for the mind and heart. Consider the mind as a garden. Without attention, weeds of distraction, procrastination, and indulgence grow freely. Discipline is the act of tending that garden, not harshly, but patiently, thoughtfully, lovingly. Pulling one weed today prevents a thicket tomorrow. Planting one seed today yields a tree that will bear fruit for years. The realizations ahead are FA. Deeper, stay till the end, or you may miss what truly matters. Each moment of self-discipline, each mindful choice, is a brick in the foundation of a life lived consciously, a life where action aligns with intention. Over time, the quiet practice of discipline transforms more than just outcomes. It transforms perception, patience, and presence. It teaches the mind that commitment is not a burden, but a sanctuary, a place where potential is nurtured, where character is cultivated, and where the self discovers its own strength and dignity. And so, when you encounter the word discipline, let it not feel like a cage. Let it feel like a gentle embrace, a caring hand guiding you toward your own highest good. Begin with small acts of awareness, with mindful choices in everyday life, and watch as the life you once imagined, the life that seemed distant and fragile, begins to take shape quietly, steadily, beautifully. Discipline is not about perfection, it is about presence. It is about tending. Your life as a gardener tends the tree with love, patience, and unwavering attention. And when you do this, you will realize that the life you were waiting for was never outside. It was waiting in the daily, deliberate choices you make, the conscious acts that say, I love myself enough to grow. I respect myself enough to care. I honor myself enough to be awake. We are shaped as much by what surrounds us as by what dwells within us, and yet we often overlook this quiet truth. Our environment, the people we spend time with, the spaces we inhabit, the media we consume, even the sounds and colors that fill our day, acts as an invisible architect, building the structure of our habits often without our conscious awareness. Imagine a clay pot resting on a wheel. The potter does not shape the clay once and leave it. The wheel spins, the hands guide, the pressure is steady, and gradually the clay assumes form. Our minds are clay, and our environment is the wheel, spinning continuously in flow. The shape we take. A young woman I once met struggled to wake early and focus on her studies. She blamed herself, thinking she lacked willpower. Yet when we examined her surroundings, it became clear she lived with friends who stayed up late, scrolling endlessly, laughing in the background, and filling her space with distraction. She was not weak, she was unconsciously responding to her environment. When she moved her study space to a quiet corner, started visiting a library, and joined a group of motivated peers, something remarkable happened. Waking early became easier, focus sharpened, and her productivity soared. The lesson is subtle but profound. Our habits are rarely isolated, they are conversations with our environment, responding to cues we barely notice. Human psychology tells us that we mirror those around us, not out of conscious imitation, but because our brains are wired for social alignment. We absorb rhythms, emotions, and behaviors like water soaking into soil. His is why a negative environment can erode discipline, patience, and focus without us realizing it, and why a positive environment can lift us to heights we once thought unreachable. Awareness becomes the key. If we act blindly, we drift, carried by the currents around us. If we act with awareness, we steer, choosing what we allow into our mental and physical spaces. Imagine walking through a forest. The paths are many, some clear, some overgrown. If you do not notice the subtle markers, the moss, the stones, the sunlight filtering through the trees, you may wander aimlessly, exhausted, unsure how you arrived. But when you observe carefully, each step deliberate, you find the path that leads where you wish to go. Life is the same. Awareness of your environment allows you to step carefully, to notice the subtle influences that shape your thoughts, choices, and habits. Even the smallest elements matter. The chair where you sit to read, the people you call when you feel low, the music you listen to when stressed. Each cue, each interaction is like a gentle nudge of the wheel, gradually forming your inner landscape. I remember a man who struggled with anger. He would return home each evening frustrated, snapping at his family and blaming the day's events. When he reflected deeply, he realized that he had spent hours in a chaotic workspace, surrounded by constant complaints, harsh tones, and relentless pressure. His environment was training him to react, to respond with irritation. Once he created a small haven for himself, a quiet room, soft music, and mindful breaks, he discovered that calmness was not something external he had to find. It had been within him all along, waiting for the right conditions to flourish. The realizations ahead are far deeper. Stay till the end, or you may miss what truly matters. This truth extends to subtle habits too. The habit of gratitude is easier when you are surrounded by reminders of kindness. The habit of reflection grows when your environment is uncluttered. The habit of focus thrives when distractions are minimized. The mind is always listening, always absorbing, and often we do not realize how much the background noise of life, the chatter, the social media, the constant obligations, is shaping our very choices. To live consciously, we must become curators of our environment, not with rigid control or avoidance, but with gentle awareness, noticing which spaces, which people, which rhythms nurture our growth and which quietly erode it. Life is a dance between the internal and external, and the external can become a mirror, reflecting back to us our habits, our values, and our potential. Like a garden, some plants flourish in sun, others in shade. Some habits bloom when the atmosphere is supportive, while others wither in neglect or chaos. We do not always have power over every circumstance, but we have immense power in choosing what we allow into our mental and physical space, in noticing the invisible currents shaping our daily choices. The key is awareness, the quiet pause before every action. Is this environment guiding me toward the life I wish to live, or is it shaping me unconsciously? When we act from this awareness, our environment becomes an ally, a companion in our growth, rather than a subtle saboteur. Every small step toward curating our space, selecting our companions, and noticing the cues we respond to compounds. The slow accumulation of conscious choices made in awareness transforms habits, and those habits transform life. Like a river channeling its waters through careful banks, we shape the flow of our days, our thoughts, and our actions. And in this gentle shaping, this quiet guidance, we discover that we are not victims of circumstance, but conscious participants in the creation of our destiny. Motivation is a fire that flickers. It is bright for a moment, warm and inspiring, but it can fade as quickly as it appeared. We often wait for motivation to strike, imagining that the perfect surge of energy or inspiration will carry us forward, but life rarely works that way. True change, true growth does not depend on the occasional flare of excitement. It depends on habits, the quiet, steady currents that flow beneath the surface of our consciousness, often unseen, yet profoundly shaping the direction of our lives. Imagine a candle in a dark room. Motivation is like a sudden gust of wind that lights the wick, brilliant and immediate but brief. Habits, on the other hand, are the steady flame that continues to burn, illuminating the room slowly, persistently, long after the wind has passed. I once spoke to a young man who dreamed of writing a book. He would wait for the right mood, the surge of creativity to sit down and write. Weeks passed, months passed, and his pages remained blank. I suggested he try something different, to write for just 15 minutes a day, no matter how inspired he felt. At first it felt mechanical, joyless even, and he doubted its worth. But over time, the act of showing up daily, the gentle rhythm of consistent effort, became a habit. Motivation arrived less often, yes, but it no longer mattered because the habit carried him forward. The pages multiplied, the ideas flowed, and the book eventually took shape. This is the paradox of human psychology. We think we need to feel motivated to act, but more often, action creates feeling. Motivation is unreliable, fluctuating with circumstances, energy levels, and moods. Habits, by contrast, are not dependent on feeling, they are dependent on choice, awareness, and repetition. Consider the simple act of brushing your teeth. Do you wait to feel like brushing, or do you do it because it is a habit? You do it day after day, even when tired or distracted, without relying on a surge of inspiration. Imagine applying this principle to every aspect of your life. Learning, exercising, meditating, practicing kindness, or maintaining focus. When you build habits, you no longer wait for life to energize you. You become the consistent force that moves yourself forward. Habits shape character, shape resilience, and shape destiny in ways that motivation alone never can. There is a subtle, often unnoticed truth here. Motivation tends to inspire grand gestures, bursts of effort, or dramatic starts, but habits carry us through the mundane, the ordinary, the moments that seem too small to matter. Yet these ordinary moments are the true architects of a life well lived. Every repeated choice, every small disciplined act compounds quietly over time, like drops of water gradually shaping stone, like the patient growth of a tree whose roots deepen before its branches reach for the sky. The realizations ahead are far deeper. Stay till the end, or you may miss what truly matters. Awareness is the key that allows us to choose habits over motivation. When you pause to observe your impulses, when you notice the tendency to wait for inspiration, you reclaim power. You can consciously decide to act, to show up, to take one small step today, knowing that the momentum of habit will carry you further than any fleeting burst of enthusiasm ever could. Life is full of these small, seemingly insignificant decisions. Do you get up and walk, or do you linger in bed? Do you read, or do you scroll? Do you speak with patience, or do you react impulsively? Each choice, repeated over time, becomes a habit, and each habit quietly shapes the contours of your life. The beauty of habits is that they do not require grand emotion, only consistent attention. Like a river carving a canyon, they are patient, steady, and ultimately unstoppable. Motivation is a friend that visits occasionally, an ally when present, but not something you can depend on. Habits, when cultivated with awareness, become the scaffolding on which your life is built. They protect you from the whims of fleeting moods, they guide you through uncertainty, and they ensure that progress continues even when you feel uninspired. I once counseled a woman struggling with fitness. She felt she could only exercise when she felt like it, and thus weeks passed without movement. I encouraged her to commit to just 10 minutes a day, regardless of feeling. At first, it was tedious, and she doubted its impact. But over time, those 10 minutes became 15, then 30, and eventually a rhythm emerged. She discovered that consistency, not excitement, transformed her body and her mind. Her motivation no longer dictated her action, habit did. This is the essence of living consciously, noticing where we rely on fleeting feelings and choosing instead to anchor ourselves in consistent, mindful action. Motivation may inspire, but awareness and habits sustain. Let your life be built not on bursts of emotion, but on steady, mindful practice. Like a garden, it is the daily watering, the careful tending, the gentle attention that produces flowers and fruit, not the occasional extravagant gesture. And so, as you reflect on this, remember that the small, deliberate choices you make today, repeated with awareness, will shape tomorrow in ways you cannot yet imagine. Habits over motivation. This is the quiet truth that carries us beyond wishful thinking into real, lasting transformation. Human nature often leads us to focus on stopping the things that do us harm, to try and remove bad habits as if they were weeds that can simply be pulled from the soil. But anyone who has tried knows that removal alone is rarely effective. The mind resists empty spaces, it craves something to fill them, something to hold on to. If you try only to eliminate without replacing, you leave a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. That is why our attempts to quit, to stop, to erase without conscious substitution often fail. Not because we are weak, but because we misunderstand the subtle psychology of the human heart. Life is more like a garden than a battlefield. If you want to remove the weeds of negativity, gossip, or distraction, you cannot do so by fighting them alone. You must plant something in their place, seeds of gratitude, curiosity, focus, or kindness, so that the new growth naturally crowds out the old, creating space for what nurtures you rather than what diminishes you. I once met a young woman who struggled with anger. Every day, a harsh word, a sigh of frustration, or a sudden outburst left her drained and guilty. She tried to simply stop being angry, to repress her reactions, but it never lasted. It was like trying to hold back a river by empty hands. Then I suggested a different approach. Each time she felt the stirrings of anger, she would pause and say one small word of gratitude or perform a small act of kindness, even something as simple as a smile or a deep breath for someone nearby. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but over weeks she noticed a quiet shift. The anger no longer dominated her. It was replaced not by repression, but by mindful redirection. The human mind is a pattern-seeking instrument. Habits form not only through repetition, but through association. If a habit is broken without substitution, the old neural pathways remain vulnerable to revival. But if a habit is consciously replaced, if awareness is brought to the act and a new pattern allowed to grow in its place, the mind rewires itself naturally, effortlessly, over time. This principle is visible in everyday life in the simplest actions. Consider the person who struggles with excessive scrolling late at night. Simply telling themselves don't scroll often leads to failure. But if they replace the scroll with reading, reflection, journaling, or a short meditation, the energy that once fed distraction now feeds growth. The old habit fades not through force, but through the natural prioritization of something that fulfills the same need in a healthier way. Awareness more than willpower is the key. Pause before you act. Notice the impulse. Ask yourself, what is this habit giving me? What could replace it that nourishes rather than diminishes? And then, gently, replace rather than fight. Life, after all, is not about self-punishment. It is about cultivation, about guiding the mind and heart toward what serves you best. I remember a man addicted to complaining. Every conversation became a vehicle for negativity, and he recognized the harm it caused to himself and others. But he did not try to stop complaining. Instead, he committed to one small change. For every complaint, he would express one genuine appreciation or one moment of acknowledgement for what was working well. At first, it felt awkward, forced even, but over time, the act reshaped his perception. Gratitude began to replace irritation, awareness began to replace reaction, and his days became lighter, more centered. The mind is plastic, and our behaviors follow naturally when the old pattern is replaced by a new one. This is why awareness is more important than motivation. Motivation may encourage you to try, to start, but it cannot sustain you against the inertia of old habits. Awareness, however, allows you to notice the impulse, to observe it, and to choose a replacement consciously. Even a tiny action, a pause, a breath, a word of kindness, a short walk, a glance at the sky, can displace the weight of an old habit when performed consistently. The realizations ahead are far deeper. Stay till the end or you may miss what truly matters. Every replacement begins small, almost invisible, like planting seeds in soil before the sprout appears. But the cumulative effect of these subtle acts can transform your inner world, your behavior, and your life. Like a river gradually changing the course of its path, a replaced habit changes the trajectory of your days, creating space for growth and joy where once only resistance and struggle existed. This principle applies not only to obvious habits, but to the subtler ones. The tendency to gossip, to ruminate, to procrastinate, or to indulge in negative self-talk. Replace these not with forceful denial, but with deliberate, positive acts that fulfill the same human need: connection, reflection, or processing, while elevating your consciousness and shaping your life. Life is not about fighting yourself, but guiding yourself gently and consistently toward the life you wish to live. And in this awareness, in this quiet, mindful substitution, you discover freedom from the unconscious pull of old patterns, freedom to grow in harmony with your deepest values, and freedom to experience the richness of a life consciously cultivated. We often look at our lives and see obstacles, circumstances that feel unfair, challenges that seem insurmountable, situations that we believe define us, and we say, if only my life were different, I could be different. Yet the quiet truth, the one that can transform how we live, is that it is not circumstances that define us, but the habits we cultivate in response to them. Life is like a vast ocean, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, and we are all sailors aboard the same ship. The winds may rage, the waves may rise, and the storms may batter us, yet it is not the storm itself that determines the journey, but how we steer, how we adjust the sails, how we choose to navigate. Habits are the rudder, the small adjustments, the repeated actions that keep the ship moving steadily toward its destination. I once met a young man who felt trapped by his circumstances. He had few resources, a difficult home life, and opportunities that seemed scarce. He felt powerless, convinced that his environment had sealed his fate. Yet when I asked him what small actions he took each day, he paused, and for the first time, he noticed that even in his limited situation, he had the capacity to shape himself. He read, he reflected, he wrote down his goals, he nurtured kindness toward those around him. Over time, these small, consistent habits began to carve out a life of dignity and growth, not because the circumstances changed, but because his character, formed by deliberate action, changed. Human psychology shows us that our minds are remarkably adaptable. They respond not to events themselves, but to how we engage with those events, to the repeated patterns we reinforce, to the habits we practice daily. Two people can face the same challenge, the same hardship, yet emerge with lives that are strikingly different. The differ. NCE is never the difficulty of the situation, but the habits they employ to navigate it. The practice of patience, reflection, persistence, and awareness. Consider the analogy of a seed planted in rocky soil. The soil is harsh, the sun may be intense, the rain scarce, yet a seed that develops strong roots, that adapts to its environment, can grow and thrive even where it seems impossible. Habits are the roots, providing stability and nourishment when the soil of circumstance is challenging. And so, when life seems unfair, when the waves rise higher than expected, we must look not outward for blame or explanation, but inward to the habits that sustain us. The small acts we repeat, getting up with gratitude, listening with attention, speaking with care, reflecting with honesty, acting with integrity, these form the bedrock of character. Awareness becomes the lighthouse, guiding us through the fog and storm, reminding us that even when external conditions are uncontrollable, the inner choice is ours. I remember a woman who lost her job unexpectedly. She was devastated, yet she refused to let despair dictate her actions. Each day she maintained a practice of learning, of connecting with mentors, of offering help to others in her community. She was not motivated by circumstance. She could not control her loss, but by awareness, by conscious habits that built her resilience and skill. In months, she not only found meaningful work but discovered a deeper sense of purpose she had never imagined. The realizations ahead are far deeper. Stay till the end or you may miss what truly matters. This principle applies beyond dramatic events to everyday life as well. How we respond to minor irritations, to small failures, to the routine stresses of work and family, quietly shapes our character far more than the extraordinary moments ever could. It is the repeated choices to act with patience rather than anger, to show kindness rather than judgment, to persist rather than give up, that gradually compose the person we become. Life is a mirror, reflecting back the habits we practice most consistently. When we cultivate habits of awareness, reflection, and conscious action, we are building a foundation that cannot be shaken by circumstance. Like a sculptor chipping away at marble, we refine ourselves through daily practice, shaping character rather than being shaped by events. And so, as you observe your own life, notice the patterns that define you, the repeated behaviors that are quietly determining who you are becoming. Notice where habits are strong and where they need attention. Understand that external conditions, while challenging, are not the final authority. Character emerges in the space between stimulus and response, in the repeated conscious acts that form our inner landscape. This is not about ignoring reality or denying challenges. It is about choosing to navigate with awareness rather than react unconsciously. In this way, every small habit, an act of discipline, a moment of honesty, a gesture of care, a decision to persevere, becomes an investment in character, an anchor in life's turbulence. Habits define us, circumstances do not. And when we embrace this truth, we discover freedom, strength, and clarity that even when life feels unpredictable or harsh, our consistent mindful choices create a life of integrity, purpose, and resilience, a life guided by awareness rather than driven by circumstance. We are masters of postponement. We tell ourselves that tomorrow will be the day, that next week, next month, or some distant future will be when we finally begin, when we finally act, when we finally change. And yet tomorrow is always just out of reach, a shadow we chase but never catch. Life, in truth, is always in the present, and it is only in the present that transformation is possible. The mind naturally seeks comfort, and it persuades us that delay is reasonable, that waiting is safe, that the right conditions must exist before we act. But this is an illusion. The river of life flows regardless of our hesitation. Every moment we wait is a moment lost, a chance to shape our future quietly slipping away. Imagine a tree in winter. It does not wait for perfect weather to begin preparing for spring. Beneath the surface, unseen, roots grow deeper, sap stirs, life continues silently. The tree does not postpone its growth, yet the process is gradual, patient, invisible to the casual observer. In the same way, your life is being shaped by every small action you take or fail to take today. I once met a young man who wanted to write music. He dreamed of composing a song that would touch hearts, yet he kept saying, "I'll start next month when I feel ready," when inspiration hits. Months became years, and the songs remained locked in his mind. When I asked him to write for just 10 minutes today, he resisted, citing lack of mood, lack of preparation, lack of certainty. Yet when he finally began, those 10 minutes became 30. Why, then an hour, and slowly a body of work emerged. The act of starting, of showing up in the present, released the momentum that waiting could never summon. Human psychology is such that we overestimate the power of motivation and underestimate the power of initiation. We imagine that perfect conditions, flawless timing, or emotional readiness are prerequisites for change. But the truth is, action generates momentum, and momentum generates readiness. Awareness, more than motivation, is the key. To live consciously, we must notice our tendency to delay, to rationalize, to wait, and gently redirect ourselves into immediate action. Consider the difference between a candle lit today and one that is planned to be lit tomorrow. The light is absent until the flame is kindled. In the same way, potential remains unrealized until you begin. Each small, conscious step taken with awareness creates energy, shapes habit, and compounds into meaningful progress. The realizations ahead are far deep. Stay till the end, or you may miss what truly matters. It is not only monumental tasks that matter, but the daily, seemingly minor choices. To exercise for 10 minutes, to read a page, to write a thought, to speak kindly, to pause and reflect. These actions, repeated today, establish patterns that will grow and ripple outward in ways impossible to predict. Waiting, conversely, is an invisible form of resistance, a slow erosion of possibility, a surrender to circumstance rather than an embrace of agency. I recall a woman who wanted to transform her health. She spent months researching diets, planning, and waiting for the perfect time to begin. When she finally decided to take one simple step, walking 15 minutes that day, the momentum began. That small act grew into daily practice, which became a lifestyle. She realized that waiting had cost her more than action ever could, and that the life she desired could only emerge through small, immediate steps, repeated with awareness. The mind often invents countless excuses to justify delay, fear of failure, lack of knowledge, the presence of obstacles. Awareness allows us to notice these patterns without judgment and to choose differently. Every moment of hesitation is an opportunity to cultivate presence, to acknowledge the impulse to wait, and to decide consciously to act now. Life does not reward perfection or readiness, it rewards initiation. Each day is a microcosm of the larger journey, and each action, no matter how small, is a thread in the tapestry of your future. Like a sculptor chiseling stone, the first strike is the most important, not because it completes the sculpture, but because it begins the transformation. Similarly, beginning today, even imperfectly, begins the process of growth, habit formation, and character building. The beauty of starting today is that it is always possible. No matter how many tomorrows we have delayed, the present remains available. Awareness allows us to seize this moment, to take one mindful step, and to trust that repetition will build momentum, that consistency will produce results, that growth will emerge quietly, patiently, inevitably. And in this there is freedom. Freedom from the weight of the past, freedom from the anxiety of the future, and freedom from the illusion that waiting will somehow make life easier or more certain. The life you imagine, the life you dream of, begins not when conditions are perfect, but when you act consciously, deliberately today. Each small choice, writing a word, making a call, taking a breath, moving your body, speaking with kindness, is the first brick in the foundation of tomorrow. As you begin, you realize that the present is not a limitation, but a launching pad, and that the extraordinary life you seek is composed entirely of these conscious acts, taken one moment at a time, starting today. And now, as we pause together at the edge of all these truths, let us reflect quietly for a moment. Life is not something that happens to us. It is something we participate in consciously, moment by moment. Every thought, every choice, every habit carries weight. Every act of awareness, every small step taken with care becomes a thread in the fabric of your life. The spiritual realization here is profound yet simple. Your life is not dictated by circumstances, motivation, or external forces. It is shaped by your awareness, your responsibility, your deliberate participation in each moment. To live unconsciously is to drift, to surrender to currents you cannot see, to hand your power to distractions, to moods, and to chance. To live consciously is to anchor yourself, to steer steadily, to recognize that the present, this very moment, is the most fertile ground for transformation. Feel it now, in the quiet of your mind. The power to act, the power to change, the power to grow has always been within you. It is not somewhere in the future, and it is not hidden in someone else's hands. It is here, in your awareness, in your responsibility, in your choice. And so, take a deep conscious breath and let this intention settle within. Begin with awareness today. Everything else will follow. Carry this consciousness into every action you perform, in work, in relationships, in small, ordinary acts, and you will find that the extraordinary begins to emerge. Do not postpone transformation. Life is happening now, in this very instant, and waiting will only defer the life you are capable of living. The realizations we have explored are not mere ideas, they are keys. Each truth, each reflection holds a door to greater freedom, greater clarity, greater purpose. Remember, the final truths hold the deepest keys. Do not overlook them. Guard them gently in your heart. Let them guide your habits, your choices, and your daily actions. Let them remind you that conscious living is not a distant goal, but a constant, tender practice. And as you step forward from this moment, may you carry with you the calm, the awareness, the responsibility, and the quiet courage to live fully, here and now, in alignment with your highest self.